Hey, Deck It Out DIYers, let's take a look at our bonus project. So our bonus project is for this month will be a little sign, which will match perfectly with your rain boot. It can sit next to your tray. It could sit on a wall. It's also a great gift. Be great, it says. And then this is the little bee traveling, and then you'll have a bee as well to glue on. So you will have your piece of wood here. If you want to sand it, you totally can. So grab your sandpaper, give it a little sand, okay? Then you can grab your sponge that you were using earlier. I'm gonna paint my background white, but again, use the colors that are in your kit or colors that you have around your house. And you don't need a lot of paint, just really light first coat. So I just gave it one dip of paint, and then I'm just spreading it evenly across. Now do multiple thin coats if you want it to be a solid white or a solid color background. I would encourage you to use multiple thin coats. That way you don't have layers of paint that aren't drying in between. I like to also paint my edges, so turn it on the side and just run your sponge down the sides. Okay? And then you want to let this sit to dry, okay? So I'll just push this aside. And you have your bee. So again, these are very fragile. You probably can see that. So if you want to sand it a little bit, you totally can. Just be really careful with his antennas. So kind of flip it over. I would encourage you to sand it that way. Okay. So he's ready to go, and I guess you could flip him around and he could go the other way, but I'm gonna have him face this way, kind of like he turned around. So to paint your bee, I'm gonna paint him yellow, so you don't need a lot of paint. So you'll dip it in your paint cup. I'm gonna kind of scrape it off on the side here. Not a lot of, sorry, there we go. Not a lot of paint, dab it off. And I'm just gonna dab the paint on him. Again, you're gonna paint him to your coloring, to the color of your likeness. So as many coats as you want. Again, I would do light coats. Now you could take one of your detail brushes once it's dry, or if you're impatient like me sometimes, and add a little eye, and maybe a smile. And then maybe you're thinking, oh, I want his antennae black. You can just take your detail brush. I always like to craft with baby wipes on hand, because then I can just wipe things off really easily. So you could reuse your detail brush if you need to, if you have it from a different color. Maybe you want stripes on his body, so you could use that, the detail brush for that. And again, I'm not using too much paint, but practice on your paper here till you're comfortable. And you know, there's no saying that the bee has to be a certain way. You could make him polka dot, you could make him a solid color, whatever your vision is. And then I'll do a stinger black. And I think I want to kind of do a little bit on his wing like that. Okay, so it's your creative design that will come into play there, okay? So I want these pieces to dry, and while they're drying, we're gonna take a look at our stencil. So you have clear transfer tape over the top. So what you'll do with your stencil, and apparently a little bit of paint was on my hand, take your stencil, flip it over. I'd encourage you to smooth it out one more time. Let me see if I can get this back in the camera view. Okay, start in a corner, any corner will do, and you'll want to peel it back. Now you want all the blue to stay down, and you want this white to come up. See how the blue kind of came up? You want to just kind of nudge it back down and peel back. This is a giant sticker, so you don't want it to stick to itself. Okay, I'm going to set that right here. This is dry, so you're going to sand it. Don't forget this step. When you sand your board, you're preparing it for the stencil. So sand it, and then I just like to brush it off gently. And then you'll take your stencil and you'll lay it over the top. Once you lay it over the top and apply pressure, it is set. So do not apply pressure until you like where it's located. I'm okay with where it's located, so I'm gonna start in the middle and work my way out. And apply a lot of pressure. You want that stencil to stick. Now, if your paint is still wet, the blue will come up a little bit because it won't stick very well. Okay, so you can also hold down in a corner, and now you're gonna pull the transfer tape back. Sometimes it's tough, like you need some muscle, so don't be afraid to pull, but also make sure you're keeping the blue down and you don't want to tear your stencil, okay? Also, the blue needs to stay down again. So just like before, we wanted it to come up clean. This time, we want the clear to come up clean and the blue to stay down because that's where you're going to paint, okay? So we're going to do this, okay? And then I like to rub it down one more time because we just were pulling up. So now you want to make sure it's down again. Okay, so now you can think about what color you're gonna paint. I think I'm gonna stick with black and do black here, and then this will be black. You could mix your colors and do like a gray. That might be fun for something. And then here, if you centered it, you could also do this a color. So that might be fun to do in yellow. So to paint the edge, I just put the paint on and pull off the side. There was a chunk of paint. So you can just kind of dab it. Again, do nice thin coats and then come back for a second coat if you want it brighter. Okay, so we'll just keep, and I got it in great, but I'm gonna wipe it off there. We'll just dab it on. It's nothing too crazy. Okay, so there's my frame. I'm gonna let that dry because yellow sometimes needs more than one coat. Okay, for the black part or the letters where you're going to dab, you don't want a lot of paint on your sponge, so make sure there's not a lot of paint, dab it off. You want it to be the thickness of tissue paper, and then you are just going to dab, okay? And I'm not dabbing too hard, like I'm not pushing it in, I'm just dabbing lightly. I'll get more paint, dab some of it off, and then dab on the words or the design that I want that color. Same rule applies, less is more. Not a lot of paint, thickness of tissue paper. You could ombre this, that would be pretty cool. So ombre is where it goes dark to light. That would be kind of cool to do something a little different. I'm gonna just stick with the plain old black, yellow, and white for this one. Okay, make sure I get coverage that I want. And then when this is done, you can pull up the stencil right away, or you can let it dry for a little bit. If you have puddles of paint, I would let it dry. Okay, because you don't want that paint to splash down on your project. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. I don't have any puddles of paint. I was gonna mark this up right here. I went off a little bit. Okay, and then I would just grab a corner, pull it up. In the workshop, we use X-Acto knives a lot to pull out the insides of letters. So you'll just pull this right up. You will throw that stencil piece away. And if you have nails, which I do not really, but sometimes I can get the little pieces, or if you have an X-Acto knife or a toothpick or tweezers, I would just encourage you to go really flat. So I kind of bumped that paint. You might have seen that, so I'm just dabbing it right there. Decided I would go grab my X-Acto knife. So Just take it and go really flat to sneak right under. Okay. And there we go. Pretty great, right? Our last thing we need to put on here is our B. I'm using this X-Acto knife to kind of touch up the letter B that I bumped a little bit. There we go. Okay, so you can touch it up however you'd like. Then you'll use your glue from before. And this is super glue, so you don't need a lot, and don't get it on your fingers, but just put a little bit on your B. And then put that B wherever you'd like them. Okay, and there you go. That's what we have for you guys today. So this is your bonus project. It will look, I mean, I painted my boot yellow, so it will look awesome on my tray or next to my tray with my boot. And it's just a great reminder. These also make great gifts. So let me see what you created. I love to see your creativity shine in these boxes. So be sure to log on to social media, share it with us, tag Deck the Halls DIY Studio, and remember to use the hashtag Deck It Out with the DTH. And what it does when you use hashtags, you can even use the hashtag Deck the Halls DIY Studio, is when you want to search something, it's kind of like a search feature. So you can pull up that hashtag and all of the projects and posts with that hashtag will come up in your feed on social media. It's really fun. So be sure to use that. Check in with us. We hope you have a great time. Thanks for joining us this month, and we hope to have you back next month.